Howdy everybody, how y'all doing? Welcome to the Ice House, where we try to keep things cool, calm, collected, and mostly a bit chill, right? Well, for those of you guys who follow along at home, and, I know there are some of you that do, you may have noticed my PSA yesterday, right? My Puppet Sheriff announcement, talking about how creating art is, basically just carrying on a conversation, if you will, right? And you can go back and look at that a little bit more if you want to. But as I was pondering about it, I thought, well, maybe there's a little bit more on the topic that we can talk about or ponder about, right? Because the main point that I was trying to get at yesterday is that there's a lot of times when we're in a creative space, in a creative mode, and we do something that seems fun, that seems neat, and, well, sometimes we share it with other people, and they're not as impressed with us and what we did as we are. And the thing is, sometimes we're in the process, right? We're working on something, whether it's writing a song, writing a book, trying to develop a character, or some sort of thing, and we haven't quite nailed it down yet, but we kind of want some feedback. And I think sometimes when we're not quite ready to give it out to the world, but we know we need some sort of interaction and feedback, either sometimes we show our work to people that maybe we weren't ready for their feedback, or maybe we weren't really ready to show the idea yet, right? Because sometimes creating something, especially if you're in the early stages of being a creator, sometimes it's hard to not take it personally when you've poured your heart and your soul into something, and it turns out that it's not well received, or it's compared to what you were trying to do, it isn't quite there yet, right? And sometimes that can feel soul crushing, right? Whether it's something somebody else said, or you just look at your final product or your demo product and then realize it's time to go back to the drawing board, right? I mean, we've all had those moments. And I think therein lies the whole thing, right? Because I know I've talked about a bit that some of us are creators and some of us just have the drive to create something, whether it's writing something down, whether, like I said, a story, a short story, a song, some sort of way to convey things, right? And then some of us are more, maybe musically inclined, and we want to compose, right? Compose good music. Or maybe you're more crafty and you want to create something, or maybe you want to create an instrument, like, design a new guitar, or, that sort of thing. There's a lot of branches of the creative expression, right? Of creative art, performance art, if you're like me and you want to pineapple and ham it up, right? Yeah, because Hawaiian pizza is delicious. And I'm not also, I don't have to say that because, I had some cousins who were extras in that movie, Surf's Up, right? But, I just think all around it's a great thing. So that's my plug for ham and pineapple on pizza. There, I said it. But going back to it all, right? There's this whole sort of, when you put your heart and soul into your craft, you want it to be well received, right? Now, for a side note, there's a lot of people that say they aren't artsy, but they're very creative, have a really crafty imagination, and sometimes those people aren't necessarily creating something new, but they're problem solving things in ways, right? Or in math and science, and they're taking what they know and applying it in different aspects or ways that's not conventionally applied and realize certain things translate in ways, or come up with new formulas to translate things and, well, get things done, right? So, I don't want to hear that none of this about, I'm too of a math science brain to be, creative or artistic or imaginative, right? We're all born with something similar. How it manifests is just kind of depends on our drive and what we're trying to do and our personalities, right? So, there. All you guys out there, you got something you're good at, right? And if you haven't figured it out or feel like it's not that good, well, don't be too discouraged, because it takes time, and sometimes we're barking up the wrong tree because we want to do something so desperately. Sometimes it just takes a little time for it to click, right? I mean, most of the greats, they weren't just so naturally gifted that they didn't encounter any setbacks or any failures, right? So, take that with some stride, or some waddle, if you will. So, that being said, the whole being creative thing, right? It's just, I don't know, it's important to keep in mind that, well, when we create something, it like I said, and I've said before, it creates a life of its own, right? And if we're trying to create something for the people around us, or the betterment, or, if it's sort of a reaction or response, which I think a lot of art is, right? A lot of stories, a lot of, whether it be long form or, book series based on things that were inspired and, that we want to share a world that's in response to our own experiences, right? Or maybe it's just a song that describes a moment that we didn't know exactly how to put into normal words, but there was music and a feeling, and we could share that with the world around us, and so many people like, oh, somebody gets me, somebody understands, I feel heard, seen, right? Because the human and puppet experience is very, well, there's a lot of things that resonate with a lot of us, because there's there's not a lot of difference when it comes down to it about the emotions and the processing, and we all have fine-tuned nuances, right? And not everybody's gonna get everything, but that goes into honing your craft and figuring out who your target audience is. And sometimes your target audience isn't quite who you thought it was gonna be or who you wanted it to be, right? And that takes time to process and figure out. But like I said, there's people out there that, if they're not creating, if they're not being imaginative, right, they kind of feel like there's something missing and something lost. And then I also want to say, like, there's people that are trying to create something new out of, somewhere out of thin air, right? Well, not really thin air, but their inspirations and reacting and trying to create something new. And then there are the tinkerers and the makers who really want to actually, hone their craft, because they're crafty people. Can't see what I did there. And they know how to make things well, and they learn the forms and the art forms of creating, like woodwork or welding or something that takes a little bit of know-how but a little bit of finesse to, make it stand the test of time, right? So once again, maybe they're not creating a new design, but they're making really, 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 really good products. Like, some of that, why the Amish woodwork in stores, they're so expensive, right? Handmade stuff is, well, we don't see it as much as often, and it's kind of a shame, right? So, right, there's a lot of reasons for us to realize that we're creative and we're imaginative and we have so much to offer the world. But when it comes down to it, and if we think that the world has rejected us, or maybe the couple of people we talked to that didn't like it or didn't see the vision or didn't understand it, right? That can be a harsh pill to swallow. Sometimes it takes a little more of figuring out how to convey and how to express your ideas, because a lot of times if it's not as refined as you think, people might not get it. And sometimes, as I've learned, if you're too subtle and don't at least lead the way or connect some dots, unless it's like one of those inside jokes with friends, people may just not catch it at all, right? Like some of the things I would consider jokes. But I digress. Anyway, the point is, we all want to do something of value. We all want to contribute or create something, whether it's just for us or the people around us, but we want to do something, something a little bit with sentimental value, something a little bit that, well, whether it's a legacy or just something cool that we did, that even if only a few people know about it, we know it happened, and maybe that's good enough for us. Or maybe we have a gift that we want to share with the world because it would be a shame not to, right? And all of these things are real, and there's a lot of drive for us all, right? I mean, I do think that if you're trying to get into something like gaming or YouTube or any of these entertainment, right, categories, just because you think it might be easier, because you might get maybe a quick buck instead of going the 9-to-5 work week or something. Let me tell you, the creating things and trying to make something new as opposed to just going through the motions and doing something that somebody else decided was a good idea, whether you agree with it or not, right? They both have their tests of time, right? They both will weigh and tax on you in their own brand of and seasons, for sure. So, but I mean, if you're not genuinely chasing after something because it has some meaning or value to you, because it could be a good thing, or you might be able to make some quick cash, or you want to get the clout or something, there's some people that are good at just being salesmen and such, and even then, that's kind of a passion they have, so it kind of meets some of the needs. But I think a lot of us, if we're doing something to meet our own needs of trying to stay sane and maybe helping meet other people's needs in the process, I think that's definitely a good thing and a beneficial thing to chase after, right? But once again, don't be so discouraged when, just because you made something, that people aren't knocking on the door to congratulate it for you, right? Because, and dare I say it, there's a lot of millennials and people out there that are mad because, and I think it's kind of stopped, but for a while there, it's like, oh, you're just the trophy generation, and you got a trophy for everything, so you don't know how to be disappointed in life or have to work hard or deal with failure, right? Well, if everybody just said, hey, good job when you made something, and it didn't push you to be better, right? And you just phoned it in all the time, isn't that the same thing as just getting a trophy because you did something? I kind of think so. Because, I want to know if what I'm doing matters or means something to other people, and I appreciate all the comments and the feedback from what I get from you guys out there, right? I read it and I try to respond, but it's just, I don't know. I think we all have something to contribute and offer, and like I said, it's a conversation, and every time we do something or put something out in the world, then gets a response, and sometimes we can hone and so you can tweak and make a better version, or over time, or scratch it and try something new, because maybe the conversation, what we were trying to say, and then the response we get makes us inspired to maybe try to say it in a completely different way, from a completely different perspective, And maybe is what'll get through to the people in the intended audience, right? And maybe to a bunch of other people that, well, they can relate. So I think, honestly, trying to reflect and share things instead of trying to do something that looks good on paper is definitely gonna, well, at least make us feel like we've done something of value, whether we get paid for it or not, right? So, I don't know. I was just pondering more of the, what is creativity? What is art? And why do we keep doing what we do? Because clearly there's some sort of validation or some sort of drive or some sort of thing that, well, something positive enough for us to keep going. So, hopefully that made some sense. And you know what? I hope you guys all out there keep going and keep working on stuff and keep being imaginative and creative in whatever your field is, right? Problem solving and, seeing something in a different way and showing what that looks like and helping other people see it too is, it's a pretty cool thing when it happens to you and the people around you. So, right? Keep it up, and don't feel discouraged if you don't feel like you've quite arrived yet, because none of us really ever do, right? There's always something more and bigger, and that's the encouragement, right? So, that's all I got. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Bye!